Glamorgan. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Jessica. Toronto's in the house.
Yeah.
So make sure there's a comment in the chat box that you, or when you're using the chat box, make sure that it says to all panelists and attendees, because some people aren't being able to take part in the conversation. So when you see the little 2 there, we'll say all panelists next to it, click on that, scroll on up, and then you can say to everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, Grand Prairie in the house. Sorry. He's like my DJ voice.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
You do it very naturally, Josh.
Oh, it's a weird skill. Is it a skill?
Yeah, it could be.
I'm gonna put it
I'll
on
take
my LinkedIn as one of my skills, DJ voice. This Sunday, or maybe a movie announcer. I don't know.
Ooh, in a world that's flattening.
Oh my goodness! It sounded like a movie about a flat earther or something. Sorry. Let's get started
before we get too silly.
I
Okay,
digress.
let's take it away.
And we're back.
All right. Aaron.
Shall we get started?
Let's do this.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Virtual Design School. This is our second session. And we want to remind you, as you're listening to us go through things, that we are live tweeting. So if you want to tweet with us, tag us at Design Lab for AHS and make sure to hashtag VDS 2020 so that we can find all your comments. That's also what you can tag when you're sending us your homework if you feel brave enough to tweet it. And last week we had a request to create a space for you guys to have conversations between sessions. So Ali, do you want to talk about the Facebook page?
Yeah, so we just created a Facebook page yesterday, and we thought about that. Everyone probably has a Facebook, and we wanted to create this group so where all of you can join, talk about your homework, talk about your problems, help each other out. It's really a community space, and you make it your own.
Yep.
So we will send the link to the Facebook group, and also you can search it. It's Virtual Design School 2020.
Fantastic. So today we have last week talked about the future of innovation and the future of healthcare with thinking about design thinking. And today we're going to leap into the stages of design thinking. We call it discover. Some people call it understand or empathy, but it's all the same thing. All talking about really, really understanding the problem that you have. And as we do this, we're going to talk about some different ways to think about your problem, some things that you can do to get to know your users a little better, how that fits into the design thinking process. And, you know, we're going to also give you a chance to give some feedback on your homework that you sent in this past week.
So, which by the way, there's been some awesome homework.
Yes,
so,
yes.
And although I wasn't part of that first session, I am privy to some of the things that come in, and it was really cool to see like a flood of just people working on things, you know, a little bit different and really, really interesting. So I want to know from you guys, type into that chat box, drop your problem in there. You know, type in maybe the problem statement, or maybe it's just a little thing that you wanted to work on, whatever it may be. You know, you can send it to everybody or even just us if you'd like, but I encourage you guys to kind of get it out there, share it with the entire group, because we're all part of a design community now. I don't know if it was said last time, but you guys are all designers now officially.
Yes, that's right. We have anointed you. So Alice has been working with something that's been a thorn in her side. Allison's getting all her department units to work more collaborative. Good luck. Good luck, Allison. What else is going on here? Oh, redesigning a face-to-face teamwork delivery. People are putting too much work into a program at a community. Could we be knighted? Les, you want to be knighted? Okay, we'll arrange that for you.
I love community communication.
Ah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, there's some really good problems in here. How to create programs I want to work on at work. Me too. Let me know what you come up with. All right,
oh, designing online healthcare workshops that keep people engaged. Ooh.
We might be able to give you some advice, hopefully.
All
All
right.
right.
So this is some of the work that we had coming to us, and we like to share some of it with the entire group so you can see what people are making. And I'm here today specifically because the Post-it Note Bandit has come back. I'm just kidding. I'm here for more reasons than that. But one of the things, she was super engaged last time, and we'd love to see her again today. And she's working through a bit of a problem. Lots of information here. And my one piece of advice is keep it really, really simple. So when we're starting off at a base, like we believe this is an issue, that's the original problem there on that, what's my right-hand side. But we think, just something really simple, like a face-to-face interaction is not the best way to train staff, and it's not even possible right now. So that's an issue that we're trying to hurdle over and we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's pretty common as you're working through these problems to try and put all the information into the problem statement, but really you want to start with a simple problem statement so that you can go as wide as possible when you're finding solutions. Another example that we liked was this one. The problem is pharmacists are ideally positioned to provide annual foot care exams, but might not be able to. So when we restate it, may not be feasible. But then we took a look at some of the situation stuff that was going on, and we realized in this problem, we weren't trying to solve the problem for the pharmacists. They were trying to solve the problem for the people with type 2 diabetes. So when you reframe that, and it becomes the problem is that people with type 2 diabetes don't have enough access to the foot care they need. And it may be that having pharmacists deliver that foot care is a solution that might work out really well, but you don't want to hang on to solutions right away. What you want to first do is make sure that you understand the problem. So keep that solution in your back pocket. May come in handy later in the process, but it's just not for right now. Another problem that we came across was how can communication between medical staff and the public be better? And what a great problem to work on, right? But the thing with this is that it's just a little bit too general. For example, what do they mean by communication? Are we talking about written, verbal, language, relationship communication? And what about it needs to be better? It really starts to really stimulate a lot of questions, who can't communicate? Why can't they communicate? So you want to make sure that you're not trying to boil the ocean with your statement and making it too big, but you also don't want to make it too general. Get a little bit more specific.
So these are two that we love. We're giving out virtual internet points or gold stars. This one I really like is lab work results cannot be understood by a majority of patients. And as someone who has a background of I'm a registered nurse originally, or as Marlies would say, I'm a recovering registered nurse. It can be difficult and stressful when we start to give results to patients and families, but how can we get them to kind of understand it? So I love the simplicity of this problem. And of course, then the last one here is problems faculty need to upgrade clinical skills, but have no access to clinical practice. Like, what a great problem that we can kind of work through.
Yeah.
So love it.
And so while we got some homework, we want to encourage people to really make sure that if you want feedback, we're going to try and provide feedback to as many people as we can. Send it to design.lab, take a snapshot. As you can see, the homework that we get are sometimes redrawn on Post-it notes, sometimes filled out, sometimes just a picture of the workbook. So however format you want to send it into us is fine, and we'll provide as much feedback as we can before we get too swamped. Now, without much further ado.
Well, we want to introduce Margriet. Yeah, we love cheering.
Yay!
We love it. So if you don't know who Margriet is, she is the founder of Orange Minds. She's from Amsterdam, and she's got a fantastic Instagram account, but you need to make sure, like, you're welcome, by the way, that you need to follow her on LinkedIn. So that you're welcome goes to everybody in this group, because she posts fantastic thoughts and different things around, design sprints and design thinking, especially you had a fantastic post about empathy not too long ago. So I encourage you guys, if you're using LinkedIn, jump in, make sure you follow her. And without further ado, I'd like to throw it over to you.
So
thank you, Josh, and Aaron as well. Hang on, let me quickly share my screen. And I think it's up, right?
It looks perfect.
Okay, good. So perfect. Good to be here, guys. And I'm realizing now, as I'm doing this, that the benefit of doing this virtually, because I see a number of participants there, I don't know, 300 something, but by doing it virtually, it like keeps the nerves down. So thanks for that. No, so indeed, as Josh was saying, I'm here to talk to you about from your problem to your user's problem. Yes, but just quickly, yeah, actually, and Josh, you already said it all, but this is me indeed, also now working from home a lot. So here you see me with my setup, still coaching teams, still working with teams. And what I'm doing is largely design sprints, and just in really short, it's design thinking made practical. That's the way I like to say it. So it's a format designed by Google. In 5 days, you go through the whole loop. I have the company together with my boyfriend, Robert, and we travel quite a bit. We love to travel, and we try to help teams all around the world. So we like to, yeah, dig in. And I mean, it's a little different at the moment. But yeah, that's me.
I love the plants. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fun,
like,
right? I mean, I made like a little green. I was there for a sprint, so it's all week. It's 5 days, like 7 hours behind the laptop, and I was like, okay, I can't go outside. I just need to bring all the green I have into the room. So that was my setup. I mean, it's but it's good. So yeah, today what we're going to talk about, and I actually have, I have this timer, time timer here, which is also a wonderful tool, and I'm actually going to put it. I suppose we're at 28 minutes now. I mean, Josh and Aaron, they gave me 30. Handy to keep a time specific. But what we're going to talk about is falling in love with problems. They were already mentioned. I saw a few problem statements. But yeah, why should we fall in love with problems? Doing research, so understanding your customer or your user. Who are you focusing on? And then that reframing or framing a challenge. So those first 2 points are actually about more the empathy, so the first phase of design thinking, and framing or reframing is more about the define phase, but we will go into that in a second. So I have a few rules, let's say, for you that I wanted to share with you. And the first rule is of design thinking, or really of, I think, the mindset of design thinking is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So I think, and this is really a key thing where I think, you know, we want to solve, well, we want to solve problems. So the solving, the solution is there. But the key here is really that it's about a problem, because if we don't understand a problem, we could be solving the wrong thing. So this is really an important thing to keep in mind. And a way that I also like to think about it is that customers don't care about your solution. They care about their own problems. So it's not about you. It's not about what you're designing. It's not about what you're thinking is super awesome. No, it's about their problem. And I mean, if your solution solves a problem for your customer, then it's great. But what I see happening a lot, there's a lot of solutions out there that don't really solve anything. So I think that's the key rule here to keep in mind. And actually, this is nothing new. Here we have Einstein. So long time ago already, but he said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd first spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem, and then 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And this is really key, I think, in that same thinking, which was, you know, design thinking itself was coined much later. But that is what it's all about. And it's about, if you understand that problem, you could realize that, hey, you know, this first initial thing which we thought was our problem, if you dig into it, it could be that there's an underlying problem that we should be solving first, or that's much more important. What also happens is that by first diving into a problem, you realize, hey, there's actually so many more opportunities that we hadn't thought of, because we, you know, hadn't explored it yet. So that's really, and I'm talking about it very passionately. That's why I said, you know, fall in love with the problem. But maybe to bring it back for you guys to the design thinking, and design thinking, the 5 phases. So just, I think a recap, I think you guys spoke about this last week, and if not, I'll just go through it quick. But there's 5 phases in design thinking. So where the first, empathy, so cultivate empathy to understand, define the problem, create ideas. So that's where the brainstorming starts, make prototypes, so that fake front, and then test to learn. So get that feedback from your user. And this is all a loop. So you don't see it as a loop here, but that feedback you get from your user at the end of something you've made, it kind of feeds back into understanding your customer. But in the thing I wanted to highlight here is that those first 2 phases are about the problem. So understanding your user, who am I solving for? And then that second part is, or the last three are about the solution. So that's where what I also see happening, and maybe you recognize it for yourself, it's kind of creating ideas. People think, innovation, that's where the fun part is, and that's where all the action happens. Let's, get creative, let's brainstorm. But the thing is, if you don't do the first part right, then it could be that you're indeed coming up with ideas for the wrong problem, like I was saying before. And I think this is something that we're very used to doing. Also, if you look at, how you were in school, I was just thinking this afternoon, like if I was taking an exam, like, it's, I don't know, a math problem, there is a right answer, and the faster you get to that answer, the better, because you need to finish the test. So we're very trained to go, towards the solution. But basically, what I'm going to be talking about today has nothing to do with the solution. It all has to do with that problem. And that can be, I think this is why a lot of companies or sometimes people struggle with the design thinking. So the mindset of it is, I think, in part because of how we're, raised or how we're educated. It's not natural. Whereas, it is natural, but we're just not used to it. So indeed, today we're going to be looking at empathy and the problem. And please let me know if I talk too quick, because I get excited. But and yeah, actually, no, and there was one thing that I just wanted to mention here as well. And I think to just jump on what Erin was saying earlier, and also looking at COVID-19, where we are right now. So problems, they can feel overwhelming. So what helps when thinking about a problem, like I think if we were to say now, let's solve COVID-19, then, where do you start? You don't know. And it's also too big. But if you make a problem more specific, so this problem, it's always connected to a user or to a customer. So the more specific that customer group, the more specific you can make your problem. So that also helps. If you're finding things now with what's happening or what's not working in your work with everything that's going on, try to make that specific to a specific user. But then I actually had a question for you guys. So we have a very cute baby there, and to explore empathy a little bit. So I have a question, and that is, so what does a baby do to learn? And you can fill that in the chat. I think I can see it coming by, and if not, hang on, let me see. I'm actually, I don't know why. Oh, I see lots of people. Josh, could you actually help me out? Because I can't open the chat for some reason. Just a few things that are being said.
Yeah, we got discover, they explore, they imitate, and copy. I've got a lot of like tactile senses, like touch, feel, taste.
Trial and error.
Trial and error, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? And I think I can't exactly remember myself how I went, what I did when I was learning, but all those things that you're saying, it is about, sticking things in your mouth, you're exploring, it's tasting, it's looking, it's observing, it's all these things you're saying. But I think beneath this, what's really there is that you're new to the world. So, you have no judgment, you're not biased, you're just looking, you're observing, and you're learning. And you're not judging anything, and you're just excited. And that trial and error is important. When you're learning to walk, you're not going to fall twice and then, just say, you know what, I'm just going to stay crawling. So I think this really helps me as an explanation of, and actually, I just love this kid. I don't know. It's what do I say? Like, it's from Unsplash. So it's a free, there's no, what's it called? Like, I'm allowed to use it, but I don't know who this kid is.
There's no copyright?
Copyright, that's the word I was looking for. But I just love the eyes and I keep this image in mind, because empathy, it's a very, sometimes explaining it to people or in companies, it's like, it's woolly, or where does it start? Where does it end? And I think this picture of a child really helps. But then what is it exactly if we look at business terms? So IDEO, which is one of the leading innovation design companies, they define it as a deep understanding of the problem and realities of the people you're designing for. And here, design, that I didn't mention before, the way I look at it is problem solving. So there's that problem again. And that understanding comes in again. But I think the important thing to highlight here is also realities. So I think this is a key thing to keep in mind when you're looking at empathy, is that yes, you want to understand, how is a user group dealing with things, what are their problems, what's going on. But it's also to keep in mind that it's their reality and it's not your reality. So a lot of things, and this is why it takes practice, is what happens is, of course, you know, we all have our own reality, our own baggage, our own history, our own background, and our own expertise. And it's very easy to, you know, when you're going through this phase of trying to learn as much as you can, to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but then it's still you. So you almost need to distance yourself from everything you know, and that's where that baby comes in again. So it's every time you're exploring a new problem, you don't know anything. It's just forget naive and just like step in as kind of with a new pair of eyes. And yeah, and what's the goal of all of that? And I think I already mentioned it a little bit, but it's to see the world through other people's eyes. And this is really quite key with the realities that I talked about, because we want to see what they see. What do they feel? What do they experience? What are they, you know, what are their troubles? Because if you really understand this on a deeper level, then you can really start to solve those problems for people. So, and this is, it takes some experience, like I said, in the way of, just kind of catching yourself, that you're not, you know, how do I say, projecting. But to help you with that is rule number 2. And that is, I like to think of it this way, that's your mother lied to you. You can talk to strangers. So you probably heard as well, or at least I did, growing up in the city, you know, stay away from strangers, you know, don't look at them, just stick with me. And it's kind of, you know, I was always and still sometimes, like, I feel like I don't want to bother people. I don't want to, yeah, take their time or whatever, but that's the thing. So how do you do empathy? That's actually the next one. So how do you do this? And there is many ways. I just have 3 for you. So one of them, the talking, of course. So it's an interview. I mean, almost the simplest form. And you can do it, you know, this is on the street. It's actually quite an effective way. Maybe not at the moment, there's not so many people outside. But it can also be planned. So a lot of the interviews I do are actually via Zoom. So that's, you know, we can still all do. But I think the thing I like about street interviews, for example, is that they're not planned. So you're catching people as they're doing somewhere. You can go where your user would be. And I think the key thing to keep in mind here when I started doing this, what I said before, that you feel like, oh, I don't want to bother anyone. But the thing is, you're not selling anything. You're interested in their life. You're interested in their problems. And if there's one thing I've learned is people love talking about their problems. And it can be small things. It can be from, you know, what did you have for breakfast? What yogurt do you like? Or tell me more about it. So it can be really simple things. But I think also actually now, especially now actually with, you know, COVID-19 going on, depending on who your user is, I can imagine you're thinking, oh, I don't want to bother people, they're busy. But that's the thing about actually interviewing, and especially in this exploratory stage, is people are often actually very thankful that you're there to listen to them for a moment, that, you know, what's going on? Tell me a little bit more about it, you know, and I don't understand, and just to actually give them that attention. So I would actually say even now, or specifically now, because they're actually raw in the moment of, you know, perhaps a problem statement or a pain that you're trying to solve, is to still use this. So that's one way. Observe and shadow, another way. So that's, you know, also very rich. So if you're interested in, you know, how is a teacher's day look, or what are her issues with online education? I mean, it's trying to think now, could you observe someone? Well, maybe you could online also do some observation, just sit in a class, or but the key here is that you don't always need to, you know, interact. You can also observe, and here it's off that people will probably know about it, but you can also do observation in a sense of, maybe you have a competitor in mind and you're interested to know, hey, how does someone else do it? Call them up, become a customer, or at least go through the onboarding to understand, hey, you know, what are they doing? So you can collect a lot of information just by going through these steps. And then, of course, what we all know, desk research. Google is super, of course. There's lots of reports. There's lots of research. The only thing that I would say is, I have a little arrow beneath it, is that I put it in on purpose, 1, 2, 3, but often what happens is 3, then maybe 1 or 2. But really to look at it this way is because the richness of information just decreases as you go to the right. So especially with desk research, when other people have done the research, and often what happens in companies, lots of money was spent on it. They'll say, no, we spent tens of thousands of, dollars, euros on this. We need to use it.
Hey,
Yeah.
Margriet, quick questions coming up in the chat box. How do you do this in COVID when people are busy and don't have time, especially healthcare professionals? What would you recommend or suggest?
Yeah, so I think that's I had this question come up as well, and I mean, so we have to be respectful of the time, but I've noticed two things. So what I often do is I put in, so either you know someone, or there's a group chat, or there's a message board, I don't know, however you communicate with whoever, is first actually ask, hey, we're trying to solve this problem, or we're trying to understand this, does anybody have time? So what I often find is that it's probably at this moment, 90% might think I just, I can't handle it at the moment, I don't have time. But there is usually always one or two or three people that will still say, actually I have thoughts about this, or I find this really important right now. So that is one way. So put the question out, but then let them come to you. And like I said, it often does help. Sometimes people just want to actually have, they want to talk about something that's going on. And another specific thing is actually, when you have talked to one person, is ask that person, hey, who else should I talk to? Because usually that person will know someone that's open to this, or that's maybe having an opinion about it. And it does help, or it could perhaps, like I said, if you're, I don't know, in the hospital or wherever you are, it could be that it's face to face, but that might be too hectic. That you could also do it like we're doing that right now, just online, 15 minutes, half an hour. But I think an important thing is let them put the question out, but let them come to you.
Yeah, and I really love the way that you frame that, because as someone who's part of a team who's doing COVID response and trying to change things really, really rapidly, I make it a specific point, and the start of my day starts off with me on the actual unit and just talking to nurses, taking that opportunity before their day start to get hectic, to ask really simple questions like, how are things going? There's anything that's coming up that's confusing you, those types of things, and really pulling in their input as much as I can. It may be only like 60 seconds that they give me, but they could drop a piece of knowledge in that 60 seconds that can totally change a direction that I'm thinking something should go, or, I originally thought it should go this way, and they're helping me, really develop what we're going to be doing later on. So those quick interactions can be super important.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe just to add one thing to that, because it depends. So the interviews, like you were saying, it can be, if you have all the time, like an exploratory interview can easily go an hour, and people love it, talk an hour, but I can imagine that's, at the moment, that's not possible. So another thing, you'll have kind of like a topic list, or things that you want to talk about, but just, if time is scarce, just really figure out, what do I want to learn? What is that one specific question that I want to understand, so that you do be respectful of, the time that they have. And then I just wanted to tell you, indeed, so if you do have these conversations, and this is really like a fire quick 4 key things to keep in mind. And that is to talk about their life, not your idea. So whatever it is, so again, it's about that problem. So you're not selling anything. So this actually helps really people to open up as well. This is, I think, if you take away anything from specifically the interviews, is don't ask would you questions. Any question that has a would you. So would you like a cure? I know, or what was it? Well, would you like a cure for COVID? Sure. But then, that's maybe a very harsh, well, maybe it is a good example in that sense, that it's, but then, it comes out, and sure, it's a cure, but it might turn your hair green. I don't know. So the thing is, we can't predict the future. So it's would you questions, catch yourself trying to say it, because what it gives you opinions, but not really hard data. What does give you hard data or facts are the past. So what have people been doing? What are they actually, so what actions are they taking? What problems have they had? This collects facts. So that's a good distinction. Talk about the past, and don't ask any would you questions. And always ask the why. It's 5 times, I believe, the rule. And I think we all know this, but it's very easy to ask once, maybe twice. And then we get into that, what I mentioned earlier about the realities. Then very quickly we go into, I think I understand what they mean now, because you think you understand. But the thing is, it's not you know, it's not your reasoning, it's what's their reality. So this is an important one to keep in mind. And if you're interested to know more, the MOBS test is a really handy book of getting some insights. You can buy the book, you don't have to, because I think there's lots of stuff. I think there's a PDF copy online, and there's lots of blogs on it. So that's just a little thing. And I'm looking at the time, it's 10 minutes and we're at the second stage. So maybe I think we're doing okay. So basically the empathy stage is, like I said, it's almost like, how do I say, like diverging. So you're collecting lots of input. So it's almost more is better, the better you understand. Yeah, well, the better you understand, the better, of course. And this is actually another point that I wanted to mention, is that you're often not doing this alone. So ideally you would do this at least with 2, 3, or 4 people, because it's, you know, to bounce insights off each other, but also to kind of make sure that you're not stuck in your own bubble, or someone can challenge you. Often in interviews, there's one person doing, you know, doing the conversation, someone else taking notes. So it really helps. It's really a group effort. But then you have all these insights, so you have them all written down. Ideally, you make them visual on a wall. I won't talk about how we do mapping and definition. But then what do you do? So this second stage is then about, you know, defining that problem. So you analyze all your observations and you synthesize it into a core problems. But it can be you start with a question, but you see, hey, lots of different problems come out. And what's the goal here? And that's to define a human-centered problem statement. And I think you guys already touched upon this last week as well. And I put the human-centered in bold there. And Aaron touched upon it as well, is that it needs to be from your user that you're solving for. So make sure that they're in there, because that's, and it sounds very obvious. Most things in design thinking do, but it's easy to forget. Because, for example, I just have one. This was a recent question, nothing to do with COVID-19, but that I got recently. So it was an insurance company, need to increase our pension product market share among pensioners by 5%. And this is actually questions, and maybe you will get them as well from management, you know, because we're very concerned about numbers and KPIs, and this is what they need to reach. And that's just the way, unfortunately, we're organized. But it's not about, you know, the company. So if you were to kind of reframe this, then it's actually, I did some research. So what's happening actually, what was the issue, is that pre-pensioners, actually just before people went on pension, they were so overwhelmed by future investment choices that they postponed decisions. Like, this process was so complex that they didn't even know what to decide. So they were just lost and thinking, I'm not even going to do it. And the thing is, with a problem statement, if you put the user central, if you do this well, and if you solve this, if you can make this process simpler, more people will market share will probably go up, because you're solving their problem. So that's the way that I usually, if you get that question from management or anywhere, it can still be a company challenge, but you need to put the user central in order to solve it. And then I have one final question for you guys, and that is, how can we design an ATM for children? So just a quick question, what are your first steps? So imagine this little kid that you see their backpack on his way to an ATM, grab some cash, you know, loading up for, I don't know, lunch money. But what kind of questions, if you put yourself in his or her shoes, what are things that are coming up? What are your first steps of what you would do? What are you thinking?
Let's see. Diction choices. Does your mom know?
Does your mom know you're out?
Yeah, I guess so. How will I reach the machine?
I like that. Watch how children interact.
Yeah.
Contactless, voice recognition. Can they read?
Ask what captures their attention.
Yeah, right. So see, that's the interesting thing, right? We can go from an empathy, we can put ourselves in the shoes of our customer, and this, you know, a child, and all these things that I heard, the height, you know, it needs to be lower, it needs to be very visual. Maybe we need to think about safety. I mean, kids going to the ATM. But the interesting thing is actually, so this is also a thing to keep in mind. So you have this question, and again, actually what we just did is, even though we took the user in mind, we went straight to, let's fix this. Let's create an ATM for children. But what about if you ask why? Let's think about, why am I going to an ATM? What does an ATM do, right? It gives me cash. So then next question, why would a child need cash? And then if you think about it again, at least if I kind of think about it for myself, then, you know, why do I need cash? Like, or when do I need cash? And if I look at that, actually the last time that I went to an ATM, I think I go a few times a year. Like if I compare it to 10, 15 years ago, I was going all the time, but it's, at least here in the Netherlands, there's this, you know, I can't even pay with cash in shops a lot in Amsterdam. And with COVID-19, like we're not allowed to pay with cash. So the interesting thing is actually, so we had the question and we went into, hey, let's, our user, put ourselves in his shoes. But actually, if we look at it, ATM, it could be that it's, you know, it's an old system. Like, is it actually really what we should be solving, or should we be having that in there? And something actually to keep in mind for any question that is thrown at you, or like a problem statement that you say, hey, let's solve this, is the ATM itself is already a solution. And anytime a solution is in like the problem, or in the problem statement, or the thing you're trying to solve, you're actually closing off to other possibilities, because the ATM, the solution's already in there, but what's the problem behind it? So that's just something to keep in mind and doing this. So you could maybe, you know, I think we could all create an awesome ATM for children, but would it be really useful? That's the question. So then if we reframe this, or if you think about it, so basically the lesson here is, you know, also with a question that you were maybe getting, is also here, ask yourself, why? So reframed, a much better question would be, how can we guarantee children can pay for things? So it doesn't mean they need an ATM. It could be, you know, a totally different system, or something else with cards, or, you know, whatever it might be. We're almost done. And this is just something that I wanted to share. So no one said it was easy. It's not so much a rule, I suppose, as a reminder, but just to say that this process of design thinking, and I know we're going through it very quickly, but just going through it, it just has a lots of ups and downs. I sometimes compare it to a roller coaster, or emotionally. And what I mean there is that you get insights and you're excited and you're learning something and you're like, yes, now I get it. And then you go out and you talk to people and it's invalidated. So, you know, just kind of to go through it, but it's part of the fun actually. And it's to be very honest, it's taught me a lot about myself. And it kind of makes you look at the world with more wonder again. So that's a good thing, to going back to the baby that we had in the beginning. But the final rule that I wanted to share with you guys. So we talked about, where I started with problems, you know, fall in love with them, talk to people. But then if you have this problem and you've defined a specific challenge, then we want to indeed start looking at opportunities again. Because in that sense, you know, every problem you could solve it in many ways. So also reframe a challenge into an opportunity. And this is kind of the way towards the second, how do I say, side of design thinking. And a powerful way to do this is with how might we statements. So how might we are very powerful words that you can kind of reframe any challenge into an how might we statement. Where if we break it down, so how, so which is, it creates creative confidence. So there's solutions. So how can we do this? I mean, it's, you know, it's the word itself has, you know, it has possibilities. Might is that, you know, it might work, it might not, but it's okay. We don't know yet. You don't have to know yet. And we is because we're going to do it together. It's not, you know, a thing you do yourself. We're going to, you know, it's hopefully you with the team, but also you're going to build on each other. So I think if you break down those words, how might we, they're quite powerful. And to give you just an example, is this was actually a challenge that I was in a hackathon with quite recently, like just 2 weeks ago. It was Hack the Crisis. So it was, I mean, and I'm sure it's the same in Canada, but here we have small business owners, so specifically smaller shops and restaurants. They can't deliver the food. So larger restaurants are often connected to, let's say, I don't know, Uber Eats or whoever, but the smaller ones aren't. So that's a problem, but by defining a problem, then it's kind of finite. So what how might we does, it creates different ideas. So it's an idea direction. So how might we use volunteers who want to get exercise or want to go for their daily walk to help local shops? So that's, for example, one. So the idea that actually came out was kind of people doing a walk with their dog in their neighborhood, pick up the food from a shop and bring it back to at least kind of a block near their house. And the last thing I wanted to say about this is that you can have a problem statement, but many how might be's can come out. So this is kind of your transition towards that ideation phase that we're not going to talk about. I think that's happening in later talks. And then just really the final recap that I wanted to share with you is, again, in the beginning, I showed you the 5 phases of design thinking, but here you have them again. And this is in the double diamond. And this is kind of also a model that's used quite frequently. But then if we look at what we talked about, is that challenge, so is that problem that we start with, because you're always trying to solve something, is then about diverging, understanding, that empathy, talking to your user, getting in their shoes, observing them, getting more and more information. And then it is, with all that information, kind of zooming in on a particular problem. So defining what is it really about. And it could be that there's many problems at this stage, but what is the one you want to solve first? So that's also an important thing to keep in mind, because you can't solve everything at once. So please don't try to, because it'll, then that whole roller coaster is just going to get worse. And
we never do that in healthcare.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. If I can give one tip, that's that's the design sprint. If you're looking for a way to keep yourself sane, I think that's why I find it very useful. And I think it's just one thing at a time with focus, because you'll go faster in the long run. And that's really it. And I think I went a few minutes over time, but there is so much to say, and I could tell you much more, but thanks for listening, guys.
The chat box got lit up, Margriet.
Totally lit up.
Or actually, I don't know.
I
can't open it, which is probably has to do with my computer. So you guys can read things to me if there's still time.
Sounds good. Margriet, could you just stop sharing and I'll switch over, and you might be able to see the chat box that way.
Perfect.
Margriet, a question that was coming up quite couple of times was really there's a tension right now between, when you talk to people, especially patients, there's this ethics and QI thing, with improvement, and we need ethics approval and research mindset. How do you navigate that? What has worked for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. And so I think it could be a little bit different for Europe, and I'm not even sure, but I think because you guys are in healthcare, so I can imagine that ethics it's even higher, but I also think ethics is even, or like legal repercussions are bigger in Canada or the States than they are here. So to be honest, they're often not in my conversations. And I think the reason for it is that, well, no, maybe one thing to say is that often you use the data anonymously. And I talk about data, but it's the conversation. So that's one thing. So it's that if it's anonymous, and if you do record it, obviously say something about it. But I think it's often because it's exploratory. Yeah, I don't know. It's actually a very good question, and it's interesting. I do this work really frequently, but it doesn't.
Maybe a different way of asking you is, how do you get to users to find users creatively? Like, what are your creative ways?
Yeah, so 2 ways. So I think like my specific way, what I use quite often, but it really, again, actually my biggest thing I would say is go to where your user is. And so that's the thing. So I find my users quite often actually on LinkedIn or on Facebook groups or on, whatever topic I'm talking about. So if I am interviewing teachers, I often go to these Facebook groups where teachers share like different like material for learning. I have had to do interviews with like truck drivers. So I've gone to truck stops like in the north of Holland where, they're, Friday eating big meatballs or whatever. So I think the thing is go to where they are. So that's one thing, physically going there, or online, just posting that question somewhere. And if you're clear about, hey, what am I trying to solve? Then there's usually always someone that's willing to talk to you. But with that, I must say that do kind of include it's called screener questions. So it's 2 or 3 questions that that the right people are going to reply to you. So that's a combination of online, or go where your user is, or it could be that you know someone in your network that has access to people. So I think it's the basic thing is it's a little creativity and just asking around. But yeah, I hope that helps a little.
Yeah, and so if anyone here was part of our school last year, and you know, I worked on a project around elderly loneliness, and we, you know, went through all of the stages of design. We actually did a design sprint, and then when it came to user testing, we were like, well, how do we find somebody? So you know, it was a small community, and where do seniors and elders hang out? In the morning, it's at A&W drinking that all-you-can-drink coffee for $1.99. So we just went there and was like, hey, I've got something to show you. Would you mind telling me what you think? You know, it's a great way to kind of connect with people. It lets them know what you're working on, and then it kind of lets you know, are you headed in the right direction or the wrong one? And it's relatively quick. People are very willing to give feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
And I think also when I was talking about interviews now, they're kind of more, the empathy is more exploratory, but I love interviewing the prototypes. So that's what Josh was just talking about, because then it's actually easier to interview as well, because you're giving them something and they just answer on it. And I think in this whole loop of design thinking and involving that user also in your testing, it just gives you so rich insights. What are they getting? What are they not getting?
yeah.
And I think especially what my biggest surprise has been through all this is that people just love collaborating. They like giving feedback, and they're like super excited. So it's yeah, it's good to include them.
Yeah,
The
people
sooner
love
the better.
co-design. Oh yeah, people love it. So Margriet, thank you so much for taking the time. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to your talk. So, you know, thank you for taking the time and being part of this.
No problem.
So
You're more than welcome to hang out with us as we finish up.
I am going to hang out with you guys.
Awesome.
all right. So we wanted to now direct our participants' attention to your workbook, because there are 2 pages to fill out in the workbook this week. And the first part, we want you to focus on the left side of the page first. And so this is where you're going to be reframing your problem and thinking about things from your problem's point of view. So just kind of trying to get different perspectives. So we start off just having you write your problem in a single sentence. You can take it from the previous page, or if you think you have a better way to state your problem now that you've heard Margriet speak, then definitely put it there. And then think about what will change if you're successful with your solution. No matter what your solution is, what do you want to change? And then we love this little trick. It's almost like a lazy triz, and it's, what are 3 things you could do to guarantee that you absolutely fail at solving your problem? And you know, you can think of more than 3 things if you like, but we want you to think of 3 things to get that kind of your brain kind of humming around what could go wrong, and then think about what are those things are you already doing. And then finally, imagine and go big and think 10 years in the future. If your problem was solved beyond your wildest expectations, what would the headlines in the newspapers say? And we really encourage you to go big here. So for my problem that I'm working on, virtual medical visits save thousands of lives every day. That's, you know, I don't know how to get there, but if we could get there, that would be fantastic for my problem. And what I do on this part is you want to take your problem statement and then think about it and reframe it as opportunities, but not just one opportunity. We want you to generate as many how-might-we's as you can. The more how-might-we's you generate, as Margriet said, the more possibilities you have of finding different kinds of solutions. So I love this slide because, you know, the light bulb isn't working is the problem, but how many different ways can we approach that problem? How many different ways can we think about solving it? And that's what we want you to do on the right side of this page. So we want you to generate as many how-might-we's as possible. Don't censor yourself. As you can see, I've got some in here. I've put down about my problem of trying to get my grandma to the hospital for her cancer appointment. Some of the how-might-we's are good. Some of them are not so good. That's okay. Just get down as many as possible and use more than the 7 in the space that we've gotten to. The more you generate, the better it is. And then the second page, Josh is going to take you through, we're going to do empathy mapping.
Yeah. So one of the tools that we love to use, and I actually seen a lot of questions and things in the chat box, like, well, how do you do empathy? You know, and there's interviews that work really well, and you know, surveys, and there's the research piece that we usually try to avoid. Margriet, I'm glad that you put that one as number 3. Is we like to do these whether they're in large groups or just an individual person or even reflection of ourselves. It's a great way to organize your thoughts. And just one like a pro tip, start with what your user kind of sees and says. It's really, really simple. It's also something that's pretty tangible. Like we know that when you're entering into a hospital,
Blah, blah, blah.
English is a thing and words.
Yeah.
The thing they first see, maybe it's signs or wayfinding, or maybe it's security, and maybe it's that I'm lost, or these are things that you can observe, you know, when you are just standing at the front of a hospital, see how people are getting into the system, and then work your way around. So then what are they doing? What do they actually hear? What are they thinking? This may come out a little bit of, you know, from the interview with people, or maybe it's just a little bit of a thought process for yourself. Like, what may they be thinking? And you're basing it off of the first things. How could they be feeling? So if we look back to Aaron's, how might we? Maybe they feel lost or anxious, confused. Maybe it's relieved. Maybe something good happened throughout it. But once you go all the way around this face, you end with the pains and the gains. So what isn't working for them? What's making the situation not as good? And gains, what are things that are working really, really well? And can we leverage those, or should we focus a little bit on those opposed to just getting rid of a pain? Can a gain be brought up so that it overpowers the other piece?
One tip about this particular map is that you don't want to get too worried about, you know, it can be a little bit organic as it comes around. If you get stumped on one section, move on to the next section, because this isn't something that has to be perfect, so to speak. As you work your way around the head, the pains and gains are going to start to present themselves and seem almost obvious to you by the time you get to that part.
So, and I like to use this as a reflection piece. So this is actually one that was done at a larger event where we're bringing people together and having them kind of reflect on the user space. And some of the things specifically in this one, are really great. Like there's threatened, physical pain, sleep pain, shame. And then someone goes and they put energized there. And it's usually someone who's a little bit higher up. Maybe they're more separated from the problem than others. A point or a pro tip that I want to give you guys is, when you're doing these, think to yourselves, if I showed this to a user, would they agree with me? So I did one of these with management, and they all said our frontline staff are feeling empowered and happy in the workplace. And I immediately was like, okay, wait, like this sounds really awesome, but I challenged all of them, like, if you showed this to your staff, what would they say? And it was like dead silence. And it was this really important reflection piece where they're like, okay, we need to be thinking a bit differently. And they took this giant piece of paper and crumpled it up into a ball. And then they're like, do you have another one? It's like, no, I don't. So we're going to have to do this on a whiteboard. But it was a really great way to get them thinking a little bit differently.
And that ties back to the reality piece. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Margriet.
Oh, yeah, so no, sorry. I just wanted to add, because exactly what you're saying is, and I see a quote there at the bottom, but what is really powerful is when you're doing all these interviews, or you're observing, or you're seeing something, or you're talking to people, is to get specific quotes from people. So what are they really saying? Because I see a lot of words here, but sometimes it can help to just be a little descriptive, so to get into the feeling. But yeah, no, it's a powerful thing to put down. And do this, sorry, and then I'll stop, as soon as possible. Like if you have had a conversation, just get it out while it's fresh, because then that's when the richest insights are.
Yeah, I love that. Quotations, like putting things down there and sharing the story. That's what like motivates people, brings power to what you're working on, and they get interested in. When there's the human piece and we can kind of see it and see what it's like from their eyes, it really pushes people to continue on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So for us, really, these are some of the key takeaways. You know, embrace that problem. Don't look at the solution. Ignore the idea of an ATM and think about, well, why does a child need this money? You know, get to know those humans that are involved. Be human-centered, but, you know, put a strong focus on your user, their story. What do they experience? You know, become that existential toddler. Trust me, the whole thing working from home while I was doing it, I experienced it with my 5-year-old, always coming up and asking why, but realizing that that is a positive attribute. You're going to learn so much through doing that. And as well as there are lots of solutions. It's easy for us to go and be like, well, toddler needs money. Let's give them an ATM and we can start to focus on that. But try to keep them in your back pocket. Try to keep those ideas just off to the side and focus on really understanding your user and their experience. Because once you have all of that information, you get into like the synthesized piece and start to decide what's the direction we want to go, what does the whole story look like, and we map it out. So that's what we're going to be working on next week and sharing with you guys. How do we take all of this information? How do we start to share it with a group? How do we start to pick what do we want to work on?
How do you synthesize what you've learned, like how do you organize that information in a way that's meaningful?
And we have, for the 3rd time in a row, Andrew coming to join us. He's amazing. He's going to make mapping great again. I'm not going to do my Donald Trump voice because this would be the 3rd time. If you want to hear it, you can go back and watch one of the other videos. But we really love Andrew, and he brings some great experience, and we look forward to having you guys come back again next week.
So if you can't get enough of us, we wanted to ask you if you wanted to join our Friday shift. So this is a half-hour kind of talk show style intimate webinar that we do for our kindred, and you can join. Just register, follow the link, and we'd be happy to see you tomorrow at 12:30 Mountain Daylight Time.
Because we're making virtual conversations great again.
Oh no, you did it!
There's a bunch of people saying in the chat box, they're like, do it. We're going to have the best conversations. They're brilliant.
So just a reminder that if you guys have any questions, do email us at design.lab@ahs.ca. You can also tag us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram or check out our website. And we actually have a couple of blogs that talk about reframing and the Design Lab process. So if you want to do a little bit more reading about some of the things we talked about today, check out our blog on the d4ahs.com. And yeah, send us your homework if you'd like some feedback at design.lab through our email. Check out our Facebook page, and if you guys want to connect between sessions, and maybe we'll see some of you tomorrow. Just want to express my thanks again, our thanks to Margriet for a wonderful presentation and for joining us for this part of the story. And Josh, so glad that you could be here with us today.
I was so glad that I could join. It's even some people mentioned in the chat box, it's a wonderful break from COVID. And you know what? I thoroughly love sharing my own personal passion for design thinking with as many people as I can. If anyone's ever run into me before and asked me like, well, what do you do? And then I get into like this long spiel. So I appreciate the opportunity to come back. And I know a lot of people are asking about registration for the shift conversation or making virtual conversations great again. We will make sure that we include that in the post-event email, as well as it's dropped a couple times in the chat box. There's so many of you and everyone's typing, it kind of flies by. We'll make sure that it is in the recap email for everybody, for those who'd like to join us.
That's right. We should mention, for those of us that didn't get a chance to join last week, that our video, we do record these and they are on our YouTube channel. Today, after this session, you will get an email that has a link to the recording, a link to the slide share, a link to register for this Friday's shift, and also any other little bits of information that we want to share with you today. And that's it, guys. What do you think? That's it.
Margriet, final shout out. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. But thank you guys as well. And I just wanted to say, I love this energy. I mean, it's the first time that I'm joining, but I just love what you guys have going on. So really well done on organizing it. And it's cool to be part of. So thank you guys. And good luck, everybody. Just, it's sometimes it can feel scary starting. And I mean, it's in theory, it's all fine, but then to do it, it feels a little, what do I say, like wonky?
Messy.
Yeah, part of the fun, and just do it and practice makes perfect, and it's, it makes it
that's
fun.
right. Progress